Is your IUL going to blow up, or is it going to work long term for infinite banking? Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Cash Compound Podcast. I'm Jay-Do, one half of the Banking Bros.
I'm the other half. I'm Jonah-Do. And thanks for tuning in to our podcast episode today. We've actually got sounds today. We're back with sound. We had sounds maybe like a year ago.
Yeah, and you've always been the kind of producer on the sound side. But what do we got? Can we give them something early?
Yeah, of course. Say something good, and I'll play an appropriate sound.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Okay, so what we're going to do on this episode is actually something that we debated about not doing for quite a long time. We didn't feel that we had the expertise and know-how to break things down in a simple format for you for quite some time. And as you know, our setup over here and one of our bread and butters about what we do in the save and spend system, teaching you how to utilize one specific tool for the infinite banking concept, guarantees control and cash flow, is the 3-cup setup. So we needed to break this topic down for you quite simply and help you understand something that we started seeing a pattern in that many of you did not seem to know or get right.
So today we're going to bring up a topic that's actually very popular. It's prevalent now if you are Google searching, YouTube searching, social media searching, when it comes to the cash value insurance space. Cash value insurance as like a broader category. And so the category we're going to chat about today is indexed universal life insurance policies, commonly known as
IUL.
IUL.
So the point of us bringing this up, ladies and gentlemen, is because there are so many people out there. If you're watching this, I'm assuming the related videos around us on a YouTube front, if you're seeing us on that platform, are going to be talking about IUL, Indexed Universal Life, and they're going to be saying topics like use this instead of 401k, the rich man's 401k, infinite banking using IUL, cash value, like Jonah said, in retirement, things like that. And we actually got kind of sideswiped into not realizing that there was another product out there that sounded, tasted, and kind of smelt like what we always talk about, whole life insurance. So, Jonah, first question for you is remind everybody the answer to this question. What is it that we're using, and why do we use what we're using?
Great question. What we use is whole life insurance. We use that specifically through mutual companies that provide dividends. That's why they're mutual. We only use whole life insurance. So there's lots of other types of insurance. Obviously, we've talked about this episode is going to be talking about indexed universal insurance, but there's other types. There's just plain universal insurance. There's term insurance. There's I'm forgetting them, of course, as I want to say them, but there's all sorts of different types out there. And so what we're trying to be clear about is we're not using those types for very specific reasons, and we are using whole life. And one of the reasons that we are using whole life is not tied to the market, not tied to S&P, not tied to index funds. And what that means for you is you're not going to have fluctuation in up and down like you might see in some of these other plans and products. Now, one of the things that drives a lot of people toward index universal lives is actually part of what I just said, but it's getting told to them or sold to them as, well, you're going to have protection. Even though you might see up and downs, there's going to be protection like a floor, and there's going to be all the upside potential, but you're going to have a floor. So just in case there's a bad year in the market or whatever, you're going to have a floor, so you're not going to run into problems.
So one question for you guys out there is, have you heard that line? Have you heard upside potential, downside protection? It's probably what a lot of agents out there are saying, or maybe even your friends who have these policies are saying, that's why I got into it. But let's back up here, Jonah, for just 1 second, and let me ask you something. What is the reason you'd be using an IUL? Like, what is it that people are trying to do, overcome, and get out of an IUL policy? Because it's not just leave it, get it, and set it, forget it.
Well, I think a lot of people think that it's set it and forget it. That's part of the problem.
Okay.
Index universal life policies, as we'll talk about in this episode, are not set it and forget it policies. You cannot do that. In fact, that's one of the recipes for disaster in these policies, set it and forget it. There's a bunch of stuff that you've got to know. if you're gonna own and operate an index universal life policy. Now, whole life policies that we use, we don't teach them to be set it and forget it. Like, there's a lot of actions that you can do to grow your cash value, but if you do set it and forget it, you don't run into problems. Like, it's not going to come back a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, and be like, oh my gosh, look at
what happened.
Where'd all my money go?
I'm about to lose it. I don't have money. I can't use money.
Right.
That does not happen in whole life insurance. One thing we are trying to say about whole life insurance and what does happen with whole life insurance is it's always guaranteed to grow and give you cash flow. Okay, so that's always going to happen no matter what. So if you can get that, guarantees growth and cash flow in an IUL, but you have the potential of getting higher guarantees growth and cash flow, then I'm all for it. But is that really what's going down?
Right. So the problem is that that's how a lot of people are being talked about and sold IULs. Yeah. You've got all that they've got in whole life too, but you've got more upside potential.
Yeah.
You can go higher. So this one's better. And the problem is that that's not always the case. And like I mentioned earlier, there's so many things you've got to pay attention to inside of index universal life policies. You cannot set it and forget it. There's like I'm not just talking about actions. Well, if I use the money and put the money back, I'll be fine, right? No, there's all sorts of things about the policy itself that you've got to pay attention to. You've got to know what you're doing in order for this policy to actually perform. And so that's actually what we're going to get into today.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to, after you understand and feel like you're educated on what whole life is all about, what IUL is all about, and you want to go down that road, we're going to let you. Totally fine. However, we have a feeling that the reason you're trying to utilize policies, cash value policies in this way for cash, that you may want to reconsider what you got or maybe getting into on that IUL space. So, Jonah, a reminder, R. Nelson Nash put together the infinite banking concept. So it's an actual thing. It came from an actual place, and there's a field guide where you can find that. Where is it, and what does he say about using any universal product for his purpose?
I didn't understand your question well, but I think you're talking about his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. Is that right? We always like to use the 5th edition. I don't have a copy with me right now, but it's got the black cover. You can get that book on Amazon. I think it's like $20 or so. Or we've got some links on our platform. If you click our link tree or the link in the bio, you'll actually see R. Nelson Nash's book link right there on Amazon. You can go there and get it. And I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah. So inside that book, do you recall? I've looked recently.
I understand now. Okay.
Do you, inside that book, obviously, do you know what he says about utilizing other products or even specifically universal products for his concept?
I've read the book a bunch of times, but I don't readily remember, with being unprompted here, exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, no problem. No, I was just wondering because I've looked recently, and a lot of people, like you said, are in the DMs, in the comments, in the emails, sending me things that we're going to reference here in just 1 second. You ready? It's coming up. And they are saying, hey, my IUL is supposed to do XYZ, or I thought it was doing XYZ. So I say, first off, if you've heard that IULs can be used for infinite banking, the infinite banking concept has a field guide, has a book, has a manual. And in there, I believe it's page 53. I don't know. I'm going for 53. Let me know in the comments if I got it right. That he says, quote, I'm going to get part of the quote right? He says a lot more things on page 53, that I would not recommend universal products for this concept. That's how he says it, which I think is putting it quite nicely. And here's why, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we're always saying in our presentations. Recently, you were in California. You did a presentation.
I did.
Okay.
One of these last weekends, I was out in Los Angeles, California, at the LA Grand Expo. I did a presentation for the attendees of that expo there. And from time to time, we travel all around the United States doing presentations. In fact, we've got one coming up just this weekend in our hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. And if you want to know more about if we might be in a town near you speaking, then reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we can connect you with where we'll be next. And that way, if you're in the area, you can come out and see us.
Yeah, so we're going to explain to you that this concept is how the wealthy for 200 years have been able to utilize. We'll show you. We even put some faces on the screen of some people who have been utilizing the infinite banking concept on their own personal level, meaning they were able to borrow from their cash value of their policy, finance things, leave a legacy, build businesses, and things like that. Jonah, here's my question. If IUL is so great, do you have an answer for why those people never used IUL? One thing that's informational, These people never used IUL.
Sure. And you're
Secondly,
all the greats.
All the greats, right? Who are some of the greats, and why wouldn't they have used this?
Yeah, some of the people that we put up on the screen. Well, there's older people and there's more recent people. I'll give you both sides. So the older people, Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, J.C. Penney, James Cash Penny, JC,
right.
Cash Penny. I need a middle name Cash. It just seems. Yeah, you were gonna make it. They set you up for success.
Okay. The reason that's not what cash meant at that time. Cash meant he was a cash guy, as opposed to a credit guy, as opposed to a borrowing guy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I thought you meant like cash, like Kobe.
No.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, J.C. Penney, Ray Kroc.
These are the
Mayor
old guys.
Rothschild.
Who are the new guys? I need to know who the new
some
guys
of the new
are.
guys is like
Ray Kroc is not a new guy.
That's a long time ago, man.
Who's the new
when did
guys?
the first McDonald's start?
Who are the new guys?
People like Jim Harbaugh, coach for Michigan currently. He's getting paid using whole life insurance.
Gotcha.
People like that. Pampered Warren Buffett's, I guess he's not as old in my opinion as Ray Kroc, but Warren Buffett used, so I apologize. No. The owner of Pampered Chef used whole life in order to fund Pampered Chef.
Gotcha.
Warren Buffett
has bought it now, right?
So that's why I got confused. It's other things like that, like our current president Joe Biden, as reported, right? They don't. It's kind of weird,
private contracts,
kind of weird. But we know for a fact that he's got at least 3, maybe 5 whole life policies with one of the companies that we use. So again, I'm going. We know that company offers whole life. They don't do index, same as the old guys. We know that they were using whole, not index. And so I'm with you on that question. I'm going, well, no one else has used index up to this point.
Well, one of the reasons is because index did not exist, ladies and gentlemen.
Index is new.
It did not exist, so that's one thing. That doesn't mean it's good or bad, right? I'm just saying it did not exist historically.
Yeah, so as we talk about this on the podcast, I'm going, well, if the track record points to whole, not index, I'm probably going to stick with the track record personally. But then as I learned more about index and why maybe it's not the best product, I went, oh goodness, I'm so thankful I had the information to make the right decision.
I'll be honest with you. We've had that probably conclusion at some point. When you and I got into this space, meaning that someone told us the truth about how we could have guarantees growth and cash flow, we didn't know that there was anything else like this. And then later on, we got introduced to the internet, and the internet started saying there was a better way to do this same process, but it was a different product. And man, they threw me for a loop, and it took a lot of homework and faith to go, what is it about my product that's different and better or worse, and their product that's different or better and worse? And it took a lot of faith going like, am I telling people something that is less true than something else? And eventually we realized, oh, no, we're good. So that's what we want to tell you guys about. The other big reason, I was kind of fishing for it, see if I could get it out of them, is that banks own more whole life than anything else out there, and they don't own a penny of IUL. So if there is all this upside potential, and we expect it to perform with upside,
why aren't the big wigs doing it?
Why doesn't your bank actually buy this product? Well, maybe we can figure it out in here. And ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually reference a few things about an actual IUL illustration that was given to us, because folks like yourself, if you want to send me some, you can. We'll talk it over. And they have IULs, or they're thinking about getting them, and they say, wait a minute, I'm looking at this because many, many people who actually sell or push IULs toward people, give them the opportunity to consider it, they send them the paperwork, and then people realize, I don't know how to read this. So they have the paperwork and they don't have the policy yet. And they're going, hey, well, you're saying a little bit differently than the next guy. Saw you doing your podcast and vodcast and TikTok. And can you read it to me? A little bedtime story. There's a lot of words, so you could fall asleep. But it's very important you focus in on just 2 aspects that we're going to get in today. You guys ready? Here we go. Okay, aspect number 1, ladies and gentlemen, is in your illustrative values, your tabular details. What you're looking at is compounding growth.
Yep.
So what you're seeing is compounding growth.
Listening at home, they send you a document, they send you a piece of paper, and inside that document, there's a sheet that'll basically tell you all of the cash values from the year and time you're starting until like you probably turn 100 or 120 years old. It's a long time. So it's a lot of numbers, year by year by year by year by year. And of course, that's one of the most important things on the document, because it'll tell you that's like projecting to you how this thing's going to grow. Now, in whole life policies, they give you a guaranteed section and a potential section, a not so guaranteed, but we think it'll do this section. And so what's fun about whole life policies is if you look at the guaranteed section, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, I got to jump through this hoop. I got to do this. Hopefully it happens. No. That's why it's a guaranteed section. So that's kind of my first question about this IUL illustration we've got up in front of the screen. I'm going, hey, is there actually a guaranteed section on here?
So this particular one, no.
No. Okay.
This particular one, no. Now, you may have, depending on the company, depending on the setup, you may have one. You may be holding one, to have and to hold one that does show a guarantee. But this one does not.
Okay.
Okay. So you still need to look at what that guarantee is, because I have a strange feeling that one of the guarantees down the line, even though in just 1 second we'll start with year one, we're going to kind of talk about the headings, that the guarantee is the policy lapses before you expire.
I've heard this before. I've heard this before. And in Index Universal Life guarantees, at some point down the line, it'll say, we guarantee right here that it stops.
Yeah.
And
so
they're like, you have to change a few things before you get there.
And if you don't,
work.
It's basically on your end, ladies and gentlemen, it means you just need to put in more premiums. If you don't put in more premiums, then it will lapse.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to get there quite yet. We're not here to just ruin your life. We're here to let you look inside of policies that you're considering.
Right.
And if you do that, I think the truth will set you free. If you know the truth, you'll know what to do. So in our tabular details, in the year-by-year numbers, okay, that's what you want to look like. If you have one out there, take a look at those columns. A lot of times you're going to see 3 columns. You're going to see the column, which might be the guaranteed column, leftmost, where you put in money and it shows you some growth. Okay, it at least shows your age going up, it shows the years going up, and it shows your premium going up. Or not going up, but going year by year by year. In the middle column, you'll see a growth percentage number. And in the right column, you'll see a different growth percentage number. Those completely can be manipulated by your agent. Okay, so I have no idea of knowing what you might see there. Maybe 3 in one column, maybe 5 in the next, maybe 4 in one column, maybe 9 in the next. Agents have the ability to manipulate what that is. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know, once again, Jonah, answer this question for me. Is this growth in these other 2 columns, are they guaranteed numbers?
No, not guaranteed. It's projected. Here's what we think it'll do. Here's what we think will happen.
Who thinks?
Here's what the average is if you have growth.
Okay.
So it's not really a we or anything. It's just the average. Here's what the average is if you have growth.
Ladies and gentlemen, is that a guarantee? Remember the 3 things I said earlier. Guarantees, growth, and cash flow. You can use the money.
Yep.
Okay, guarantees, growth, and cash flow. These numbers are not guaranteed numbers.
Nope.
Okay, so we have talked many times before, but ladies and gentlemen, on this particular podcast, we don't want to leave you hanging. We're not going to clickbait you into other things. What we want you to understand, once again, is average is not actual. Average is not actual. So if you're taking an average growing rate, 3%, 4%, and it's going up, you're going to see in this illustrative reflection the number of cash that actually equates with the average growth.
That's right.
But if the average growth is not 3, 4, 5, year after year after year, the numbers don't matter.
That's right.
Because we have no idea if it's going to perform this way. Jonah, what I tell people sometimes on the phone is, hey, if someone presents you, or me, if I present you with some sort of illustrated tabular values of your potential policy, and one shows you growth of 5% and the other one shows you growth of 8%, which one do you want to sign and take home?
The 8% one.
And what I tell people all the time is, me too. And then I say, but it doesn't matter which one you took. It matters what the index did.
That's right. It
doesn't matter. You can take the 5 all day. You can take it.
It's kind of a little bit about sequence of returns. We've got a video coming out shortly about sequence. So here's what I mean by that. You can have 2 different sets of returns, completely different, like a 10%, 8%, minus 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, and I can have something completely different, 10%, 1%, 2%, minus 2%, 5%, and our average might still be 4, both of us. Completely different numbers, but
Correct.
Our average is 4. And the sequence of which we got those returns dictates how much money we have.
Yeah.
Not the average.
Yeah, the average doesn't matter, because if you got a 5 and a 10 and I got a 10 and a 5, we had different numbers.
We have different numbers.
Yeah, so you've got to understand that if you're going to use this for guarantees growth and cash flow, you have to know if there's going to be cash flow.
Numbers. You can't, averages won't do it.
Averages are not going to tell you what you have. And everybody knows that when we're connected to any market function, which is not the point of the episode, I feel like we might have to come back and like dive into this. IUL 1, IUL 2, IUL 3.
We might have to do it.
Because I said the only thing we were talking about today is two things, average versus actual, and then we're going to talk about actual contract language. We are trying to help you understand that if you're doing this for guarantees, growth, and cash flow, you're going to need to know what the cash flow is.
You need to know the number, not average.
The number, yeah.
The actual number.
So what happens if you retire in a different year than me, and you came off of a +3 year, and I came off of a -3 year? We might have the same average.
Could have the same average.
But we're going to have way different numbers because I just retired in a down year. Ladies and gentlemen who are retiring this year in 2022, God bless you. Because so far, the S&P and other indices, which are very much the indices you might be using in your policies, are down 25% as of year to date right now.
Right. So what we're talking about there is anything tied to the market. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's the qualified plans that you're using or policies like the index universal policies that are tied to indices, and they're tied to that. If you have fluctuation like that, it's not about an average, right? I mean, you can make a bunch, lose a bunch, make a bunch, lose a bunch, have an average of 25. But making a bunch and losing a bunch might just make your dollar be right back in the middle where you started.
Yeah, you may not have made any money.
It doesn't mean you made money.
Yeah.
It means your average was good, but it doesn't mean you have money.
Yes. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're not here to just poop on these things just for the sake of doing it. You can look yourself. But if you don't realize that average is not actual, you might be fooling yourself into thinking that the numbers, the projected cash values, are actually something that you can write home about. You cannot. Based on someone guessing every year, the IUL, true or false, John, the IUL never shows a loss.
True.
It never shows a loss. It never does. It ever show the 0%, the floor, the 1% floor? No, it just shows 3 or 4 or 5 or 6,
or whatever.
And it's always positive. Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to that as you need. Please ask us more questions about IUL over the course of the next couple of months and years. We are going to have to address this more often. So many of you out there are looking into IULs. There's lots of people jibber-jabbering about it. And so we're just going to have to talk you through that a little bit more often. So one of the other things, point number 2. We're looking now into the contract language right below these actual numbers.
Okay, we're going to put them on the screen for everyone who's watching.
You got to look at this. Okay, so a couple of things that we want to say for this particular policy. We are going to, of course, not tell you who it came from. We're going to protect the wealthy here because this person ended up deciding to not go with this policy and to do something more guaranteed. Is that we're going to read you some of this. Okay, follow along, ladies and gentlemen. I'll read you a little story. Benefits and values are not guaranteed. Now, that's not that special because you see some of that language in whole life as well. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they show you guarantees, but they also show you projected with dividends and things like that. So they're just saying blanket. Not everything you see on here is going to happen. Right. There's only certain things in a whole life. Benefits and values are not guaranteed. The assumptions on which they are based are subject to change by the insurer.
Don't like that.
So do you have one of the things that you talked about on your presentation in LA, I bet, was control.
I did talk about control.
Well, who has the control in an IUL?
The insurer, because it says that. The assumptions on which they are based are subject to change by the insurer. What that means is the insurance company is the insurer.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You.
Yeah, not you. So what you need to understand about this is how the insurance company participates with the index is based on how they choose. So what they're doing in there, which is another great podcast episode probably, is getting more detail into the options strategy and options budget of buying calls and puts so you can participate in upside potential and downside protection. That's on them. But it doesn't stop there. The rates for the percentage of premium expense charge. Jonah, count them for me.
Okay.
Monthly cost of insurance, monthly expense charge, monthly policy fee, monthly percent of accumulated value charge, rider charge, and withdrawal fee are not guaranteed.
Do them again.
All right, let's go through it. Rates for percentage of premium expense charge.
Okay, so these are the ways that they can charge.
And they do charge.
Yeah.
These are there are charges in here, and they list them for you.
All right,
they just list them for you. Percent of premium expense charge. monthly cost of insurance, monthly expense charge, monthly policy fee, monthly percent of accumulated value charge, rider charge, and withdrawal fee. Are not guaranteed, will be determined by the company, and may change from time to time based on expectations of future, anticipated, or emerging experience. Jonah, how many we got up to?
6. I counted 6
different charges.
Yep.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what you need to know about that is your participation into the strategy the insurance company is using to get into that game with the index has all of those charges and all of these fees associated into any IUL policy. So if and when those expenses change, which is not controlled by you, and now we're tying that to the first issue we went into, how the index performs, which, Jonah, do you control that?
I don't control that either.
Does the company control that?
Nope.
So the company controls how they participate with the index, which you don't control at all, and neither do they, is subject to change. For how long? How long does an IUL last? What category of insurance is it under?
It's in permanent insurance category.
What does permanent mean to you?
It just means your whole life. It's not going anywhere. Like, again, as long as you pay for it, as long as it's active.
So if these policies have the ability to run out of funds
because of
the fees and charges and the lack of performance, potentially, of the index, and it lapses,
not looking good.
Would you consider that personally? Personally, would you consider that permanent?
Personally, I would not. No. If I can lose it because of something that is not under my control, I wouldn't call it permanent. Now, if I can lose it and it was my fault, I did it, then sure, you can call it permanent because then I did something to mess it up.
Right.
But no, if I'm just minding about my business and then they have to change the cost of insurance or the expense charge or the rider charge and the index falls, so they have to update the charges to do blah, 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 and then I lose my policy because of that, then I would be like, well,
personally, I ain't calling that permanent.
Yeah.
What's really crazy.
Yeah.
Now, we can't get on. That is way above our pay grade right there, because in the insurance world, there's term life insurance and there's permanent life insurance. Universal life and all of them, index, universal, and variable, as well as whole life fall underneath that permanent. But yikes, ladies and gentlemen. True or false, your actual IUL contract or illustration you might have or be looking at while you're thinking about this, look at it later if you're driving, of course. If it's going to lapse on the paper, I mean,
it's not good. It's not looking good for you.
Yeah,
to know how to manage it appropriately to make it,
or use the cash.
Yeah,
Jonah, if we're taking the cash from it, and that cash is going to need to be there to keep the policy going because performance and charges are changing.
Yep.
Remember,
That's
because surrender values, cash values can take.
That doesn't sound like I should take my cash out to go buy something.
Because if the cash is not there and the policy it can't get fed with that extra piece, then it's not going to be permanent for much longer. Jonah, on top of that, what was the reason we got the IUL in the first place?
It's supposed to be cash.
To use the money.
It's supposed to be. Doesn't seem like it's going to work in that way.
Oh, I agree. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, there is more to learn about this. We're probably going to have to come back. We recently, as of this summer, became friends with an IUL dissection expert as well. I put him on one policy, but we didn't dive into specifics. He gave us the general, and he told us some of these things. And he said, hey, you know what? IULs can come from lots of different companies. There can be lots of different indices they're connected to. There can be lots of different participation that people claim, but if you look at performance, average versus actual, which we have always talked about, and you look at how the insurer participates with those options that they have to buy, neither of which you control. Ladies and gentlemen, are you sure it's going to give you guarantees, growth, and cash flow? That's my question for you. Jonah, take us out. Do you have anybody you want to give a shout out to this afternoon?
Of course
and
I do.
Let them know that we hear what you have to say.
Of course I do. We've got a fan follow this week. So quick shout out to our fan. And as I pull it up, okay, it is Billy Joe Davenport. Billy Joe Davenport recently followed us on YouTube. So I guess that actually makes him a subscriber. But we want to give a quick shout out to Billy Joe for following us there. If you're watching this episode, he's recently followed. So normally when you recently follow, you watch a few.
I hope,
you know
but a lot of people binge them, I think.
I think so. So if you're watching, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about this episode. Tell us what you have questions about on the last episode. Tell us, you say you like us. Whatever you want. We want to hear from you, and we want to shout you out in one of the next episodes, or maybe answer a question or two. So that is our fan follow of the week.
Appreciate you guys listening, learning, and watching. If you know the rules, you can use the right tools. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to crack the code to cash flow. We're looking for guarantees, growth, and the ability to use that money throughout our whole life and crack the code to cash flow.